It's always great to catch up with this man to preview the Group 1s on the final day of the championships, and he's been in brilliant form for us. Winning Edge Investments, Dean Evans. Good morning to you, Dino.
Morning, Gareth. How are you going?
I am very well. It is going to be an interesting 24 hours. First of all, with the weather, and we had a chat to Michael Wood. We're on a heavy 8 at the moment. We've had a host of text messages and emails and social media messages sent to me in the last couple of hours saying, Gareth, look at this on the radar, unfortunately. Rain is heading towards Randwick.
It is raining, yeah. I'm sort of half an hour from Randwick, but it is raining at the moment, and the forecast seems similar to Randwick to where it is here. There is a bit of thunderstorm and that sort of thing around, so I think the best we can hope for is not too bad a downpour, maybe for a couple of hours, and then, if we can get kind of the afternoon and the night clear, and Saturday's supposed to be clear, then the Randwick track still does a pretty good job in terms of drainage, and I like to think that maybe we can still fluke a slow 7 or a heavy 8 at worst.
Yeah, I think it'll be a heavy track, but as you pointed out, it can dry out if the right conditions occur there over a Friday night or especially on a Saturday. But the problem is for poor old Randwick is that every time it gets a little bit of a gap in between downfalls and it looks like it's drying out, it cops more rain. So it just hasn't had that opportunity, especially the last week.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, last year was the worst. I think the track's been for a very long time where it just continued to rain on the day of the races. Yeah. I think often in most of these big tracks these days, if it doesn't rain on the day of the race, then they usually, your big tracks like Flemington and Randwick, they usually race okay, as long as they've just had some time to dry. So like I said, I'm sort of crossing my fingers. If there's no rain on Saturday, which is expected, and no rain for sort of a fair bit of this day, then it's not going to be a sort of complete quagmire type Randwick like it was last year, and even last week, last Saturday, where it was very heavy because it sort of rained during the day. But at the end of the day, that didn't stop us. We had I Wish I Win the TJ for us. Mr. Brightside won the Doncaster. So we had a fair fill up last week, and I think we can do so again this tomorrow.
Today's wagering update brought to you by Bet365, the world's favourite online betting brand. Chances are you're about to lose. For free and confidential support, visit gamblinghelponline.org.au. Can't wait for the Queen Elizabeth, mate, and you have been in devastating form. Bet365 market, Animo 260, Dubai Honour is at 240. Alanquer at $41, Cascadian at $11. Then we go down to Unicorn Lion, the Japanese galloper at $12, and Montefilia at $19. How do you assess this year's Queen Elizabeth? Because punters believe, and everybody basically talking about this race believe, it's a match race between Dubai Honour and Animo.
Yeah, look that way. This is a great race, as it always has been. Winks has won it 3 times. Dave won it twice. It's a done deal, reliable man, some recent winners. They can come from anywhere here. The last 11 years, 5 come out of the George Rider, a couple out of the Randwick, the Tancred. They've come out of the Doncaster and Coolmore to win this as well. Looking like a match race. 9 of the last 11 winners have been the top 2 in the market, but we did have Think It Over win last year at sort of 50-1, so it can spring a ball over. For me, I do have Dubai Honour on top. I tipped it to your listeners in the Randwick and just made an absolute mess of them. He's a really high-class import, multiple Group 2 wins. He ran second at the Group 1 Mascot. He's only beaten 1.3 lengths at the Group 1 level at Sha-Tin on their major international race day. So he's a high-class international horse. He won the Randwick by 4.5 lengths in the canter on a dry track. And he actually drifted in the market because they thought the track might be too dry for him. So the wet's not going to be an issue. Some of his best performances have been on wet tracks. The form lines and the margins of the horses he thrashed in the Randwick, they compare very favourably to Animo. The sort of horses that he beat, Mwanga and Hinge and Montefilia. Animo's been beaten them, but certainly not by those sorts of margins. The only negative I can see from Dubai Honour is that, Tom Marquand's ridden them 5 times without a win. Tom's obviously won his race a couple of times with the day, but he's an absolute superstar rider, so no negative on Tom. But it was the only thing I could find was that Tom's ridden them a few times without winning. Apart from that, I see Dubai Honour as just an absolute high-class individual, and I do think he's the one to beat. But I do think it's an interesting race. You can't obviously back Dubai Honour and Animo, but I think Unicorn Lion's a very interesting runner. He ran second in the Group 1 a couple of years ago. That was a race that Lee Gracheur won and then came and won the Cox Plate. And this horse is the same trainer as Lee Gracheur. So, the trainer certainly knows what it takes. The Japanese horses are very high class. He won a Group 3 over 2,000 metres 3 starts ago. He sort of mixes his form. He's definitely not the class of Lee Gracheur by any means, but you have to respect the fact that he's coming over here in this race and he's sort of $12. And I thought the roughies, if there's going to be a complete boil over, Alan Kerr has absolute A-grade Group 1 form in Ireland, France, England and Dubai. He just flopped in the All-Star Mile, but I think the wider expanses and softer ground at Randwick going to suit him. We saw Mai Oberon come from running second last in the All-Star Mile and nearly winning the Doncaster last week. So I think Alan Kerr can bounce back. And Numerian's another one who's had an absolute cracking speed in the Australian Cup and sort of 9 lengths above par early on, leading and still managed to hold on for second. I always love that kind of form coming into their next start when they've led and run a really cracking speed. And we saw Major Beale come out and win the Derby last week of a similar type performance in the Tulloch. So I do think Dubai On is the one to beat, and he's the one I want to be backing. But I'll be sort of specking Unicorn Lion, Alan Kerr, and Numerian, and just taking Animal on completely.
Alan Kerr, we had a chat to Mike Moroney. He's been told by the former connections that he probably hasn't handled soft going in the past, but he does believe that Randwick will be a far better track for him than Moonee Valley and what he saw there in the All-Star Mile. So he's an intriguing runner. Just with the clash between Dubai Honour and Animo. Now, we had a chat to William Haggison this morning to kick off Stable Mail, and he said it was a career best performance basically in the Randwick the other day, and he's hopeful that he can continue to race in that form and produce another figure like that. But so when you do your ratings and your calculations, what do you take into consideration? When they spike like he did the other day to win a Group 1, are you confident that he can do it again, or you're a little bit, well, hopefully that just wasn't a one-off for him?
Oh, look, when I'm doing the form for these sort of, particularly these staying races, we've just got to, understand and appreciate the realities of the Australian breeding industry and where we're good at and where we're not as good. Yeah. And when it comes to the sprinters, you even look at races like the Golden Eagle and these sorts of things. And the overseas horses have struggled. We breed really, really high-quality sprinters. We breed really, really high-quality young 2- and 3-year-olds. And even up to sort of a mile, our horses are very, very good. But when we get to the staying races, they come here and they just absolutely plunder them. And the return on investment and profit on backing these overseas horses in the staying races is just enormous. So I'm always very confident, and I think it might have been a career performance, but this horse, like I said, he got beat 1.3 lengths at Charlton in their major 2,000 metre international race. He's won at Ascot, run second at Ascot at Group 1 level. So he's just a really high-class horse. And I think the concern for the Randwick was that he just didn't actually look like he was in career best form, and now he's hit it. So for me, if Ryan Moore was on Dubai Honour, it'd just be, max bet type thing. I think it'd be just about unbeatable. I think the only negative I can find is that Tom's ridden him 5 times and hasn't had a win. Apart from that, I do think he's a better horse than Animo. And I think, all being equal, he'll beat him again.
I'll just play you a grab from Vin Cox when I had a chat to him at the Easter sales regarding if the rain does come and what they might do with Animo heading towards tomorrow's race.
Look, I mean, it's hard to deal in hypotheticals. I don't really want to speculate. No. We'll make a decision on Friday if it's heading that direction. But if it is very wet, I hope the ATC decide to postpone the meeting and we can get back to a nice track. So
that was interesting there for the punters, because I think if it's a heavy 9, heavy 10, and they go ahead with the meeting, I don't think Animo will start because they want to go to the UK. So we just got to hope this rain, well, if it hits nice and early, so it gives the track time to dry off a little bit, mate. But it would be fascinating to watch what happens in the next 10 hours or so now with this Randwick track. Yeah,
that's right. I mean, the weather forecast has been getting it wrong consistently,
Correct.
And it wasn't really meant to rain on the day of the races last week either. So I can't say anything with any confidence when it comes to the weather people. But it's supposed to be fine tomorrow.
Yep.
And I presume if it's fine tomorrow and fine most of this afternoon, then it won't be wet. But I can understand their concern. Animo got beat 15 lengths in this race last year when it was just an absolute bog quagmire, and so obviously they're going to want to avoid that. But I'd be surprised if they don't run at this point in time. I'd be surprised.
In the Sydney Cup, we've got Gold Trip, who has to carry 59.5, but he carried top weight to win a Melbourne Cup last spring, and that was on a rain-affected track, and he gets probably his perfect conditions there tomorrow. He's at 750 with Bet365. And then we go down to a horse as we just go through the market now for the Sydney Cup. So we've got Gold Trip at $8, I should say. Knight's Order at 17. Baron Samedi's an interesting runner. Joseph O'Brien, we had a chat to him on the Stable Mail. He is over the moon with this galloper. He's first up here, but he's been effective first up before, so he's at 13. Then we go down to Surefire at $15. Cleveland's the favourite at $4.20. High Emotion at $12 was placed in a Melbourne Cup. And then King Frankel at $5. How do you assess this year's Sydney Cup, Dean?
Yeah, interesting race as always. I think a couple of interesting facts. 17 of the last 20 winners have run the first 4 at the previous start. And interestingly about every runner's drawn inside 12. So it's a short run to the first turn over 2 miles. And while you're thinking a 2-mile race at Randwick, barriers wouldn't matter. The vast majority of winners seem to come from inside barrier 10, about 18 of the last 20. So that makes it interesting when you're just doing the form, and particularly with a lot of the key chances drawn out wide. Sticking with the theory and what's given me a lot of success over many, many years, looking at the imports first, I do think Baron Samedi, he's won past 2 miles at Group 2 level before. He's trained by Joseph O'Brien. He absolutely loves wet going. He's racing well. He's in good form and ran a good second last start at the Curragh over 2 miles. Unfortunately, he's drawn barrier 20, and that's obviously a big negative in this race as it turns out. But I do really like Baron Samedi, and it's quite interesting to see him at sort of $14 or $12, $13 compared to Cleveland, because when you compare their form, Cleveland is a handy European stallion. He's also trained by Joseph O'Brien. He's won over 3,700 before. He's run second at Group 3 level, beating the neck over 2,400. But when I look at the form of Baron Samedi, he looks a class above Cleveland, and that's part of the reason why he's got a higher weight. And we saw Cleveland really hit the line well for 5th in the Tancred, and in the bigger track and damper conditions will suit. But the imports have proven a class above ours in staying races, and for that reason, I am keen on both Baron Samedi and Cleveland as my 2 top picks. I think High Emotion was a really good run in the Chairman's, ran really strong with 4th last week. In that race, I think she's going to set to peak here. Ran 3rd in the Melbourne Cup off the 7-day backup last year, so likes of backup, and I think they've absolutely set her for this race. And 5 of the last 11 winners have come out of the Chairman's. Nerve Not Verve ran 3rd in the Chairman's. I think she's also a bit of a chance. I think Gold Trip, very, very good horse, but wide draw, 59.5 kgs, coming off an okay run in the BMW in the Tancred, but not ideal form. And Surefire was another I was interested in, but has had a bit of a setback with an issue with lameness, so not so sure about him. So I'm keen on the imports, Baron Samedi and Cleveland for me here.
Alcohol free with Bet365 is the favourite with Bet365 for the Queen of the Turf, the Group 1 for the mares. Fangirl at $7.50, Levante at $8. Both those mares will be looking for drying conditions, and looks like they're not going to get that. Hope in Your Heart's just got a big heart at $8.50. Cirilio Miss is an interesting runner for Simon Wild at $6.50. She's been smashing the clock. A Tissue was a big run first up at $13 this preparation, and then big prices for the rest, Dean. Who wins the Queen of the Turf? William Haggis basically told us if alcohol-free turns up like she did in the European season of last year, she'll be winning this for fun.
Yeah, look, she's a very classy mare, 4-time Group 1 winning mare, imported from Europe. I think a record sale, something imported for $11 million, I think. She won the July Cup last year. She can sort of win over 1,200 to a mile. She's won 2 sort of big Group 1 miles in England as a 3-year-old filly. She trialled well. It's her first run for 8 months. I think the statement that if she runs to her best, she wins is correct, but she's coming first up of 8 months. She's running on a bog over a mile. And at $3.30, it's just not the type of horse that I'm going to launch into. You're right about Fangirl. Really needs it dry, and I'm just not sure it's going to be dry enough for her. Levante was one I was really keen on, just a super 4-time Group 1 winning Kiwi mare. She charged home for 5th in the George Rider. But again, there's another one that I actually haven't seen, probably a track as wet as this. So it's going to be interesting to see how the track's really playing. And often the easiest way to assess a track, Gareth, is just to see the early races, see which horses usually like the dry or like the wet, and which ones are winning. And I'll be looking really closely at that for a horse like Levante. If I think it's dry enough, Levante is definitely one I'm keen to be on. I think Hope in Your Heart there was just a really good run to Doncaster, flew home for 4th. Horses can back up from a Doncaster and win this race. They've done it 3 times the last 9 years. So I think she's a big chance. And I thought the Ruffy was a horse called Times Square. It's about 50 to 1 from the Karen Marseille. Just on multiple Group 1 mile place getter in France and strong races. She handles wet tracks really well. She was all right first up, but it's sort of a couple of excuses. And I just thought it was really interesting that Hugh Bowman jumps on here and it elect to sort of stick with a Group 1 race for this sort of import who's having a second run in Australia. So I thought if it was a blowout, I was quite keen on Times Square at really big odds.
And Kira Ma's always been bullish about her chances when she gets on a really rain-affected track, and she'll get that tomorrow. So I like that push there from you with Times Square. Let's have a look at the Oaks. Pennywecker at 650, Perfitra at 350 with Bet365. Fireburn, this would be a story. A Slipper winner as a 2-year-old and then an Oaks winner as a 3-year-old. She's at 650, Arts at 550. And then we go down to Premise at $21. Who wins this year's Australian Oaks, Dino?
Yeah, look, the class often rises to the top in the Oaks, despite it being over 2,400 metres. I do think it's Pavitra and Pennywecker. It's a clear top 2. Pavitra was second in the Wakeful and VRC Oaks in the spring, bolden to win the Kembla Grange Classic by 4.5 lengths, and sat on a really strong early speed, sort of +8 for the first 600 in that race, which, was really impressive. And there was a good second behind Prowess, who's a superstar, and she doesn't have to meet again tomorrow in the Vinery. So I think the Pavitra rates highly is the one to beat. Pennywecker won the Group 1 New Zealand Oaks by 3 lengths last start. Plenty of fillies come over here from a New Zealand Oaks strong performance and win this race. Form usually measures up, so and she's proven over the distance. So I think Pavitra and Pennywecker for me are the 2 to beat. And if there's a boil over, I thought So Dazzling was midfield and finished really well for second in the Kembla Grange Classic. Then was a bit disappointing last start, but different kettle of fish here at Randwick, 2,400 metres. John Sargent's really great with these 3-year-old filly stars. He's won plenty of Oaks, and he's also put Joe Moreira on, which and we know he's able to win on some at really big odds. So I thought it sort of 33 to 1, So Dazzling was worth something as well for a knockout.
What about, just quickly before we let you go, the Adrian Knox form then?
I actually backed Arts last week at 30 to 1. It was a really, really good win, but just didn't beat much. I think she's having her 4th career start in her first prep. And for me, it's just, unless she's a superstar and as good as Jouet was for Ed Cummings and he found another one, I just think coming off your 4th career start, it's going to be a hard effort. The Adrian Knox form for me is always really strong when it's a bog the next week. Because those horses coming up that 7-day backup often really perform well when it's a bog in the Oaks. I just, again, we're trusting the weather gods, but at the moment I just don't think it's going to be that absolute bog because I'm still holding up hope that it's not going to rain much more today and it's going to be clear tomorrow. So I just don't know if it's going to be wet enough for us. But if it is a heavy 9 or something, Gareth, then the Adrian Knox form does come to the fore.
You're a superstar, Dean. You've been in brilliant form, and for our listeners out there, this is the best deal that you can get all autumn. All you need to do is head to Winning Edge Investments, and the website there, go to the members section, and you can subscribe to Winning Edge Investments. You type in SEN, and you get a 50% lifetime discount there with Winning Edge Investments. So that is the best value that you can get all autumn, mate. You're backing plenty of winners if you can do that.
Yeah, look, we've had a really great autumn, and it's been really pleasing to hear from so many of your listeners and enjoying the services and having a great time. So, still an opportunity for a couple more weeks to get on with the 50% discount.
You're a good man. Thanks for that, Dino. Good luck tomorrow. Enjoy day 2 of the championships.
Cheers, Gareth. Thanks, mate. All the best.
Well, hello there. We're away this weekend in our Isuzu, so we can't help you tow your boat to the beach or break your Uncle Andy out of present. Maybe it's time you bought your own Isuzu.
Waverley Isuzu Ute, driven by Australia Motors.